Arlin Sorensen. I consider him the godfather of the MSP, the managed service provider or the technology service provider. He's very humble. He doesn't really accept that, and that's his prerogative. But in my eyes, he founded the peer groups that I've been a part of for a long, long time. Helped me. The peer groups helped me change, my attitude, my direction, my knowledge in business. I love this man. I mean, he's incredibly humble. He's very knowledgeable. He started his MSP in Iowa in 2000. He had a buying group together, and after Y2K kind of flattened out, he got some MSPs together there in Iowa, went to one of the distributors, Ingram Micro, and tried to get a buying group, and eventually made peers, and just an incredible success story. Always loved talking to Arlen. Everybody in the MSP world knows Arlen. I can't imagine they don't. But just a humble, humble man. What he does as far as discipline, you might find shocking. He's done it every day since I think 2006, has not missed a day. What motivates him? How he defines success? Does he like the term MSP? Just different ways. He's got 4 different classes of defining managed service providers. And it's not just service providers, by the way, it's small businesses or just businesses in general. Kind of 4 different modes he has. But just great conversation, great discussion, where the industry is going, where technology is going, what are the 2 main things that small businesses worry about today? I'll give you a hint: staffing and something else. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business and it lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Arlin Sorensen, what a pleasure. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks for your time today. Is it a good time right now to be an MSP?
Well, the MSP world has been pretty good the last 2 years, actually.
Yeah.
There's no question that we were needed in the industry to keep the economy alive, basically. So, yeah, I think it's a really good time to be an MSP.
Yeah, we definitely, we saw some, not many, just kind of get hurt because they worked with hospitality and other industries that
Right.
got hurt. But the overwhelming majority, the workforce has moved out, their customers' workforce has moved out, and they needed MSP's help.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the label essential worker was really true for
Mm,
MSPs. They were the essential workers.
yeah, they absolutely were. And what's the general tone? You run a great peer group there. You invented it, of course. You started it, and now it's part of ConnectWise. And you've got a lot of MSTs. The power of the peers is just so important. I mean, what is the overall temperament and attitude of the MSPs these days?
Well, I would say in general, most of them are doing okay financially. They're struggling with labor.
Mm,
They just can't get enough people to manage to fit with the growth path they're on. So I don't know that I could name an MSP that doesn't have at least one open rec for an employee, and a
Wow.
lot of them have multiples. So that's the real frustration right now. They could be growing a lot faster if they could just get the people.
When I talk to MSPs, they've got two big concerns, and one is definitely, talent, and then the other is just, of course, just cybersecurity.
Right. And inflation's another new one.
Oh.
The cost of the business is going up significantly and quickly. And MSPs are not the greatest marketers or salespeople. So having to go have that conversation with their customers that, hey, my costs are up 10%. I can't just eat this. We're gonna have to adjust pricing. That's a hard conversation for a lot of folks.
It certainly is. And, why are 25% of, my good friend Jay McBain told me 25% at Forrester, 25% of MSPs do not make money. Does that surprise you?
No, doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, we've been benchmarking companies since
That's
2008,
right.
and there's no question that there's a segment at the top 20% that do really well. There's a segment at the bottom that are not doing it at all well,
Mm,
and basically break even or lose money. And then you've got the 60% in the middle that are doing okay and have really done better the last 2 years than they were previously, except like you said, if they were in a vertical that got really slammed, like dental, hospitality, medical, whatever.
yeah, and then and then they felt it. And I talk to MSPs. I love talking to MSPs, and I always encourage them. I mean, let's talk about peer groups. There's peer groups that aren't in our industry. There's just general ones. There's just I know that when I first met you, I joined the peer group, and it just changed my business around. I was no longer on an island by myself. I felt like I was part of a tribe, and you brought that all together. I've heard this story, but please refresh my memory. Now, why did you start peer groups?
I started peer groups back in 2000 because my company, my MSP was struggling,
Mm,
and we had just come through Y2K. I had staffed up because we were going to have the greatest opportunity in the history of IT,
mm,
and it didn't happen in Iowa. And I had way too many people and no work, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So we called three other companies in the around the state and said, "Can we just get together? I need some perspective on what's going on here." And they agreed. We met. I learned that Y2K missed Iowa completely. There was no work for anybody,
really?
which gave me the assurance that I should downsize because I just couldn't carry 9 extra people. So that was the one and only time I had to do a major layoff. But had I not had those peers to tell me what was really going on with them, I might have I might have tried to carry this out thinking that somewhere some magic was going to happen, and that would have been financially a real mistake.
Tell me what the phone calls like. Were these friendly or they competitors? They were these three that you reached out to. Had they heard from you've been talking to them previously?
We had sourced product to them previously. They weren't competitors. They were from varying parts of the state and had needed our help on things in the past because of some of the authorizations we had for product. So we knew them a little bit. They weren't like close, but they were people that were friendly and they were in the same boat. It was like they didn't have any work either, and they had done the same kind of thing. So Y2K is the greatest event that never happened for IT.
It really was. What a crazy, crazy time. We're all just sitting there like at New Year's, just, you know,
That's right.
ears to the computer. What's going to happen? And I remember hearing like, like Tonga and like all those Pacific islands get are the first to, be in the new year. Like, oh, everything's fine there. It's sweeping across. Here we are in the US and yeah, everything
Yeah,
is just fine. I mean, it's just yeah, crazy, crazy time. And so eventually you kind of made a buying group for a distributor, right?
we did. That was my original kind of plan for peer groups was let's create a buying group. We had 6 companies by then, and I got the great idea of flying to Ingram out in Buffalo and sitting down with their sales team and telling them that this little mighty powerful group ought to get a discount. And I basically got laughed out of the
Did
room.
you really?
I mean, we didn't have any volume to speak of, number one. And number two, we had no track record, no history. There was no reason for them to even listen to me. They did it because we had a relationship. But yeah, that didn't last long. And we did convince them to let us do some joint buying under one ID,
Hmm.
which was ours, and that worked okay until one of the peer group companies got financially in trouble and couldn't pay their bill. And then
Whoa.
that's where the buying group ended. Was when we were responsible for these other companies paying their bill, it had never crossed my mind that they might not be able to,
Right.
but it happened, and we came out of it okay in the end. But it was an idea that just wasn't going to work the way we were trying to run the peer groups.
Wow. Yeah, that's gotta be, oh man, because all of a sudden you're getting billed, and so you're billing them. They're kind of it's kind of a master agent kind of thing,
Right.
and then they're not paying their bills, and then you're stuck with it because it's your ID. Very interesting. I never thought of that.
Yep, that's exactly what happened, though.
And so then how do you move that into peers?
So, I mean, the buying group theoretically was going to have some positive financial impact, but the real value of peers is getting in a room, bringing a problem, and asking people for their input.
Mm,
And that's where we found the value was. And over the next few years, we put together the planning process so that we could help companies actually create a plan so they knew what they were trying to do, which then allowed us to hold them accountable through goal setting. So, when I talk about the real impact of peer groups, it's really having a plan, setting goals, and then having people that can hold you accountable.
mm,
Most entrepreneurs run a business because they want to be the boss and do what they want to do. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily what they need to do if they're going
mm,
to actually grow a company. It's why those 20% are losing money because they're not doing the right things. It's
mm.
not that the industry can't support them, it's that they don't do the right things. And I'd almost guarantee they're not in a peer group where they've got somebody that's pushing them to do the things they need to do.
Very interesting, because I remember when I first heard the concept, and I remember thinking, "Well, I'm gonna have 10 or 11 other MSPs in a room with me that I'm gonna get really comfortable with. Won't I feel, that I'm competing against them?" And I knew they weren't in my geography, but that never came up once. It never felt, it was more of a camaraderie. It was more of, like I said, a tribe, and that just what gets wiped right away.
Well, and today, Joe, I mean, everybody's a competitor today with the
Mm,
internet, right? So people, there are some people that still view, somebody halfway across the world as a competitor, but
hmm,
the folks that get involved in peer groups realize that competition is a part of life, and the value you get from a peer group from talking about the right things and learning the right things is far outweighs the one time you might run into somebody else in the room on some crazy deal. And you work that out anyway. When you've got a trusted relationship, competition is really the least of the things you worry about.
yeah, very, very much so. So, if you're listening and you're not part of a peer group, please, join one. It just does wonders. There's a lot of other ones out there that are, like I said, horizontal, but just what it did for me. And I got the great opportunity, of course, Arlen. I actually became a facilitator at one point. Our facilitator left.
Yep.
You asked me to become a facilitator, and I really, really enjoyed that. And that was, the old cliche about herding cats, but it was, because you've got some egos there sometimes, and
Oh yeah.
and you got to kind of align everybody. And um, uh, how does that process go now with facilitation? I get to speak to some of your facilitators. They're all great, by the way, but it can be very challenging.
It can, and one of the things that we've certainly learned is that we need to equip facilitators with tools to help them manage the room, because you're right. You've got 10 or 12 people in the room that are all entrepreneurs and all think they're right all the
Mm,
time. We've got to equip our facilitators to have the ability to have crucial conversations and call BS when it's necessary and those kind of things. But most of our facilitators are previous entrepreneurial owners, so they can look in the mirror and see exactly what they're going to be trying to facilitate. And for the most part, we have really no real issues. People are respectful, and when you get that trust relationship, you get the right to say, "Hey, Joe, enough,
that's right.
quiet down." So it really goes very, very smoothly for the most part, and we're grateful for the folks that are willing to step up and take a shot at leading groups for a while for us.
Yeah, and you just reminded me when you said that. We've had, I've been with the peer groups for a long time, like I mentioned, but we've had some really we really get into it there, and we talk about it's not just business, it's also our life work balance um, and a couple meetings where people were just relatives had died or they were sick and it comes out or there's no holding back and it can get and just the opposite there could be celebrations where people won great deals and we all high-fived and we all and celebrated and it's really a tribe mentality. I strongly recommend the peer groups and I'm glad it's stronger and better than ever now, right?
It is. We made the decision in 2018 to sell to ConnectWise, not because it wasn't working, but because we wanted to expand the reach, right?
Mm.
And we were at a point where I was either going to have to put a whole lot more money into the business to grow it, or let somebody with a lot more resources take over. And that was the decision and the path we chose. And they have expanded the reach. They have provided the resources. It's great having a marketing team and a
Mm.
sales team and all these things that we didn't really have before. And so we're up to serving almost 600 companies now,
Wow.
and it's really taken off and thriving. And we're adding new components to the program as the industry changes. We've got M&A peer groups now. We've got CFO peer
Hmm.
groups. Our service peer groups have really grown, and so we're really going deeper in these companies because they're growing, they're bigger, and they've got more people that are making decisions. So we want to support all that. And the ultimate goal is to help people figure out what they're trying to accomplish and then get there, right?
Mm.
And that's the legacy play that we have is tell me what you want to do and let us help you get there. And that's what the peer groups are all about.
Yeah, and oftentimes the business owners don't know what they want.
That's right. But that's where the planning comes in.
Mm.
After you begin to see the numbers and really understand the levers that you have to pull as an owner to drive value, they quickly figure it out. And the planning process really drives that discipline and helps them to define what their ideal outcome is, and then the group can dive in and help them get there.
And hold them accountable. Yeah.
Exactly.
You mentioned earlier how a lot of the MSPs are technology led, even small businesses. Usually, the principal, the owner, is very good at the particular science or discipline that they're working in, and to move them to sales and marketing is a challenge. What do we do about that? We try to get them more resources. We try to convert them. A lot of them feel like sales is dirty, and it's just the whole mindset. Without sales, you're not going to grow.
Right. That is one of the big Achilles heels of small business in general, but certainly in the MSP space. And what I've found, Joe, is that the first thing we have to do is get them to embrace owner led sales while they're smaller. You know, Sales is not something you can just hire somebody and throw up over the fence to them. It won't work. And we've got lots of examples of people that have tried that, and it never works. So until the owner will take responsibility for sales and kind of create a process frame what the offering is, do all those kind of things, they can't hand it off.
Right.
And that's where it really always blows up. So they've got to embrace owner-led sales. And to me, that's probably a process that needs to stay in place till there are 15 to 20 employees.
Mm.
It's not Most of them aren't going to have successful sales people in their company when they're less than that size. Once they get there, though, then they've got enough, size and scale in their finances to be able to go out and find a salesperson. But their responsibility doesn't go away. It
Mm.
has to just shift to, now we're going to co-sell. Well, I teach you what I've been doing as an owner led and help you get to the place where you can have that same conversation. And once they get that first guy in place, then they can move forward because they've documented, they've got some collateral to hand out and different things like that. And so, most small businesses set salespeople up to fail from the start because they don't have a process, they don't have any supporting materials, they don't really give them a prospect list. They just think that somehow magically these
Mm.
folks are going to figure it out, go out and find a potential prospect that wants to buy what they have to sell. And that doesn't happen in the real world. I don't even think it happens in the movies. Um, so it's a journey to get there, but it's not where you start. It's kind of where you get to as you grow.
Yeah, I know. I know. I've had salespeople in my when I was young in the company, and I certainly failed them. The whole adage of, well, where's your prospect list? Well, here's a phone book. You know, it just
Exactly.
it doesn't work. And also, what you kind of said in there, which I think small businesses, MSPs struggle with, smaller ones, is delegation. Right? They wanna do
Yes.
everything themselves. They even wanna order the pizza themselves. Nobody can do it right unless they do it, and that you're not gonna grow if that's the mentality.
Absolutely. It's a blocker for sure. Um, I was one of those guys that didn't think we needed sales to be successful.
Huh.
I thought we could just do it with our technical team, and we did grow for a while that way, but we plateaued. I got stuck 5 years basically at the same revenue level, couldn't figure out what to do to make it different. And the reality was, I just couldn't go sell anymore. I
Mm.
was capped out, and so um, that's where we got into M&A, and I brought on our first merger and got a VP of sales and a real salesperson as part of that, and that helped us to take off and go to the next level. But it's probably the hardest thing to do in a small business is really start to put sales, in as a focus. Because technically, you said it, a lot of people think sales is a dirty
Yeah.
thing, don't want to do it. You can't grow without it. I mean, it has to be part of the formula.
Yeah, it definitely does. And yeah, you mentioned M&A, growing organically or, growing inorganically with, through mergers and acquisition. I just remember and I hear you saying it always in my mind is that these companies look into M&A and they think their business is worth so much more than it is.
Yes, that's very much the case today because the market's white hot,
Right.
and people don't realize, and this is definitely an area that we teach with our planning. Companies get bought because there's an ability to repay the price of that acquisition.
Hmm.
And if you aren't making any money, if there's no profit, people can't afford to pay a lot of money. And so, the name of the game is EBITDA, and making sure that there's a regular, consistent profit that's going to be generated. The beauty of the MSP space is a lot of that money comes through contracts, and so
Hmm.
it's predictable and you can count on it. And so that's what's making the market, love our industry right now, is that it's a pretty predictable thing. But still, at the end of the day, if you've got contracts and you're not making money, nobody really wants to talk to you because they'll never be able to recoup their investment. And so, uh, profitability is still the driver for valuation.
And especially in a service-based industry, I remember, I don't know if this has changed at all, but service leadership, like best in class, we're talking about margins like best in class were around 20 to 23%. Is that still the case?
Best in class EBITDA runs about low 20s,
Mm,
right? And that's still the case. The average across our peer groups is a little under 12%.
mm.
So the MSP world it's a tough business. There's no doubt about it. But once you get your model in place and you begin to really optimize, you can grow that. And again, with the contracts, once you get the engine going, it's pretty predictable, and you can really make it happen.
Yeah, very true. And I also want to make the point is that, we had a decent amount of, peers in the peer group who just liked the lifestyle business and they didn't really want to grow that much. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that, if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, Joe, this is a project I've been working on a lot in the last 18 months. It's something that we call the modes theory.
Hmm.
And there are four different types of companies that we've identified and really talk about. Everybody begins as a startup, so that's the first type of company. And startups are typically underfunded, chaotic, hair on fire. The owner's doing everything, and surrounds himself with some other people like him, usually that are on fire too. Over time, if they learn how to put some process in place, hire some right people, and start to generate a profit, then they can choose to move to another mode.
Hmm.
And the three other modes that we have uncovered, we first one we call is the balance builder, which is really the lifestyle kind of mode. They value what they do with their time and their money, and they're not focused on trying to drive some giant outcome. They just want a nice steady life that they can enjoy with their family, make enough money to support that. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
In fact, some of the happiest people I know are balance builders because they're not trying to conquer the world.
Right.
They just want to make enough money to enjoy life and have the time to really do it with the people they care about. So that group is a pretty good chunk of our industry. The second mode that startups grow into is called the value builder mode, and that's the set of partners that are trying to grow over the long haul. It's the slow up and to the right kind of process. They're trying to find the right people and the right customers that they can develop a relationship with, and they just want to play the long game and get to a point down the road where they'll be able to sell the company and be able to support their future. The balance builder, the lifestyle type companies, they've got to save the money as they go because they're not going to
Mm.
sell their company in the end for a whole lot of money because they're not building a lot of value in the company. Whereas the value builders playing the let's build this thing over time game. And then the fourth or final mode is the empire builder. Okay, the empire builders typically come from one of the other modes, often from the value builder mode, and they're all about go big or go home, man.
Mm.
We're gonna do something big. We're gonna do it fast. Almost always they bring in outside money, and right now in our space it's private equity money, and they use that money to do acquisition and to drive their organic growth. But they're on a timeline. They're playing, big stakes to win quickly, and if it works, it's a great thing. If it doesn't work, it's not a good thing.
Mm.
But there's a bunch of that going on right now in our space, and that's really what's driving the M&A market in a lot of ways. Is these empire builders often on a 3 to 5 year kind of timeline, and they're trading basically their life for that period of time to try to get a big return. And so there's a lot of those in play. We'll see what happens if it really works out the way they think it will on paper.
And in the peer groups, when you have these distinctions, I would assume that you really can't mix and match a lot of them because these empire builders don't want to be with the lifestyle, right? They want to be with other empire builders. How does that get divided up?
Yeah, so we are pulling the empire builders out
Hmm.
into their own groups because you're right. The conversations that they have are completely
Hmm.
different than what a value builder or a balance builder would have. They've got board of directors, they've got external funding, they're running their business on a budget, a very strict budget, all those kind of things. So there's a ton of discipline that has to happen at that level that doesn't happen in the others. And so we have groups specifically for empire builders, and we have to facilitate that differently with somebody with more experience in the big space.
Hmm.
Um, Value builders and balance builders can fit together in a group. They're closer. A lot of times, balance builders may be wanting to become a value builder, so
Hmm.
they're trying to figure that out. So there's some value there. Value builders often are, they're not going to do a lot of M&A acquisitions, but they might be looking for a company they could plug into their business, not to disrupt it and go crazy. But so there's a lot of goodness that can happen in those relationships. We have a lot of activity within the peer groups in terms of M&A activity
Hmm.
because there's trust there, right?
Right.
They know each other, they know the businesses that they've spent years together seeing the financials and all those kind of things. So we do, the startups typically are going to be in our online program because they don't believe they can be gone for a couple of days to come to a face-to-face meeting.
Wow.
So we have a program just for startups, basically online, and then the value and balance builders are kind of sprinkled together, and then we have the empire builders that are in their own groups.
And these kind of divisions, I don't think it doesn't seem like they're solely toward, based on MSPs. It seems like any business can really fit in them.
That's exactly right, and it is kind of the way different businesses are, no matter the industry. And so, what we're learning and teaching our MSPs are that you need to understand your end client and where they fit
Hmm.
in what mode they're in, because they all have different desired outcomes, and the sooner you can understand that, and a lot of them are feeling it today because those that are in the empire builder mode are gobbling up some of their other
Hmm.
clients, and they feel the pain of that because today, company Y is a client, and tomorrow they got acquired by company Z and they're gone. Um, you want to have that conversation. Are you trying to sell your company? How could I help you get that ready? Those kind of things. But you're right, modes applies across all businesses, and we think it can be a game changer in how you should communicate and really plan to serve folks in different modes.
Yeah, I love it. I remember when I first heard about it, and you've actually matured it a bit. It sounds right on. The term MSP, managed service provider. Where do you stand with that? Do you? I mean, I always like to ask, like, do you like that term for our industry?
uh, Not really. It's too narrow. We often talk about TSPs, technology service providers, because that embraces kind of the broader umbrella. When the MSP started, there weren't that's all it was people that were really focused there.
Mm,
Today, everybody wants to be an MSP.
right.
So you've got the office equipment guys, you've got the telcos, you've got AV, you've got all these adjacent kind of industries that are entering the game. And so I like TSP because I think that's really a reflection of what's really going on out there.
Yeah, I like that term too. Sometimes I hear ITSP as well, information technology service providers, but as long as it's a service provider, and I always hear numbers being thrown around, and I always want, how many are there, and but how many really are value added resellers, right? That are just resellers trying to. I mean, the MSP industry is so attractive because of all this M and A, and like you mentioned before. Um, I've always, and I've never shared this with you, and I'm going to share with you now, but I've always valued you as the godfather of the MSP. I just thought that, you're there. I think you're there in the beginning, certainly one of the founders, but just, you know, you want to be an MSP, you want to be good at it. Talk to Arlen. Talk to his, see what he does, see what he thinks about it. I wonder what you think about that moniker.
Well, I think that's a little too much credit. That's what I think. I was around in the early
Modesty.
days, but I certainly didn't figure it out. And I remember the first time I actually heard the concept was in 2004 at a SMB Nation event out in Redmond,
Mm,
and there was this crazy concept of let's just charge them a flat fee price to take care of their stuff, and everybody was up in arms. You can't do that. How are you
right.
going to do that? You have no idea what you're doing. Well, we didn't have any tools back then,
Right.
to enable it.
Right.
So it was kind of a guessing game, to say the least. But I remember the first time that we talked about it in our peer groups was that in early 2005. And, you know, it was the blind leading blinder.
Mm,
I didn't know what I was talking about really. But we had a great conversation as a group. We worked our way through it. We put together some plans, and people began to start to implement it. And it wasn't until we got to 2010 or so when like Automate came out and or Lab Tech at the time, where we had some tools that could actually help us to manage these networks. Up until that point, it was a whole lot of getting the truck and drive,
hmm.
and so it's matured a lot over the years, but those early days were scary days for sure because nobody knew exactly what it was, and we're scared to death of a fixed price kind of service model because we'd always been time and materials or prepay, and so it was a fun transition.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't take credit for it because I didn't invent it by any stretch.
Well, part of being the godfather is modesty, of which you are. But that switch from you know T&M, from time and materials to flat rate, was huge. And then I see the next transition, like to cloud, where everybody was concerned about where to move to the cloud, and now we kind of see this transition to from infrastructure to information, where people's apps need to be monitored, and it's another dramatic shift. I just hope the MSPs can make that shift, and they're dynamic enough to do so.
Well, and at the same time, we got all this security
Security, yeah,
pressure going on,
yeah.
right? And it's one thing to try to secure things where you've got physically got control. It's another thing now with work from home or work from anywhere
Right.
where you don't have control of the perimeter in any way, and then you got the cloud in the mix, and so there's a lot of moving parts right now. And but you're right, the real outcome is data and business intelligence and all those kind of things. That's where the rubber meets the road for the client. How can the technology really help them run their business? I've often said that we got away for a long time with just making stuff work, not really actually driving outcomes.
Mm.
And those days are going to get over, and customers are going to ask us to use the technology to help guide their businesses real time. And we're seeing that in agriculture in a lot of ways right now. And so the tech is getting better and better and more valuable and can be real time, and that's where we're going.
I mean, I can remember conversations 8, 9 years ago with clients, talking to them about the importance of security. I'm sure those conversations don't happen anymore. I mean, everybody knows how important it is, and there's many different layers, and so it's just the tools have to get more, have to get better, and the MSPs have to get better at implementing them and supporting them.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how many people talk about security but don't actually spend the money
Mm.
on security.
Hmm.
And that's still the reality in the market today. Is there's very few customers that actually embrace security the way they need to, and MSPs have not done a great job of of making clear what the risk really is. These breaches can be business ending kinds of things,
Absolutely.
and so we've got to do a better job of educating and to your point, putting together the right tool set to provide maximum protection as cost effectively as we can. But we're a long ways from having our customers protected the way we need to.
Yeah, I've actually talked to, M&A firms, that, that wanna do the acquiring, and, if you don't spend a certain amount of the percentage of your revenue on security, they won't consider you. I don't know what the number is, like 10% or something like that, and that's how important it is for even for acquirers to know that you take it seriously, that, certain revenue has to be devoted to that. That's how important it is, because like you said, it could be business ending.
Yeah, well, and the other big thing right now, Joe, is that getting cyber liability insurance
Mm.
is also becoming a real challenge because, again, companies aren't spending adequately to protect
Mm.
themselves. And so, the loss ratios from these insurance carriers have been through the roof. And so, they're saying no to a lot of people that can't show them that they've taken the right steps, and that's even true for MSPs. I've heard a lot of MSPs that have been canceled because they can't verify that they've got the right tools in place to
Wow.
protect their own network. And that's a real challenge in our industry right now, and it is a project that we're working on at ConnectWise to try to have a solution for that
Mm.
by this summer.
Yeah, the cobbler's kids don't have nice shoes,
Nice
right?
shoes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what advice would you give right now as we sit together, to MSPs, TSPs?
Uh, Probably the most important thing I see is the need to focus on people.
Mm.
As we're in this period of turmoil with what the workplace is going to look like, trying to hire new folks. I mean, culture has always been important, but right now, culture is really at the top of the list in terms of getting people to come to work, getting people to stay at work.
Mm.
Retention's a big challenge, and I MSPs like we've talked about. They love the technology, not so much the people.
Mm.
They gotta change that, and provide the right culture, the right environment, but then they got to invest in creating leaders, right? Used to be you could manage people by walking around the office and just looking over their shoulder, see what they're working on. I mean, today, managing folks is a whole different ballgame, and so most MSPs are not equipped. They haven't trained their people to be able to do those kind of management and leadership things that need to happen, and so that's my big advice is invest in the people. If you don't have the right people doing the right things with the right management and leadership structure, you're at risk. And there's a lot of people out there trolling LinkedIn looking to pick people off.
Mm.
So you've got to create a culture where people want to be working for you. They may not be in the office with you, but you got to have a culture where they want to be part of your company. And we've taken that for granted for way too long. We got to really get serious about how we do that.
Especially when you have the really big tech firms, the trillion-dollar ones that are hiring people and they could just stay wherever they are and they're giving them very good salaries. Lots of, the competition has never been more available. You mentioned management and leadership. When I always talk to business people, I always like to, I've had many managers in my company who thought they were leaders, and you have to kind of have that talk about what the difference is. Could you expand upon that? There's just a common misconception.
Yeah, I mean, leadership to me is the ability to have a vision and a view of the future to help shape where things are going to go. Management is really what are the tactical things that need to happen once we know what we're trying to accomplish, where we're going, what do we have to do to actually get there day to day. And they're typically two different personality types. You've got the more visionary, forward-looking folks that can help tell the story and bring people along, and then you've got to have these managers that can just execute whatever the marching orders are. They're the ones that get the work done and make sure that we accomplish it the way we're supposed to. If most leaders tried to be a manager, they would fail miserably,
Hmm.
and most managers would run from being a leader because they like to know exactly what's going to happen, not make it up as they need to.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, there's just a clear distinction there. And it's interesting. I want to ask what advice you would give vendors that want to work with MSPs, that want to work better with MSPs. And I wonder if it's the same answers of the advice you give to MSPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's understand what the other, whether you're an MSP or a vendor, what are you trying to accomplish?
Mm,
What does success really look like in our relationship? And, um, certainly I've not been in the game in the recent years, but from my past experience, what made success to a vendor didn't always make sense to me as a VAR or an
mm,
MSP.
mm,
They got measured on things that I would have never really expected to be for them to be measured on, and vice versa. And I'm a big believer that if you're my vendor, I want to understand how you get paid, right? Because if I can
hmm,
understand that and help you get there, well, we now have trust. We've got a relationship, and you're going to be more likely to reach out and figure out what success means to me and help me get there. And so that was always a question I asked when I met with a vendor: is how do people get paid?
hmm,
And it was always I was always amazed. It might be we need you to get 100 seats in webinars this quarter, or we need you to find 5 new companies that will get their people trained, or what. It was stuff that it wasn't just dollars,
mm,
right? We always think that vendors are going to pay their people based on sales. Well, that's a component for sure, but they've always got programs, they've got events, they've got other things that matter. And so I just always took the tact of help me understand how you're successful. I want to help you get there. I'll tell you what it means for us to be successful, and I hope you can help us
hmm.
get there. And we create a win-win environment. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Here on the podcast, we talk a lot about discipline. I lost a lot of weight. People always ask me, how I did it. I always say discipline. Ran a business for a while. Like they want some quick fix answer, and I just kind of really summarize it to discipline. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Arlen.
Well, the it plays a big role. It's a critical part of success and being successful in every area. The thing that I would say has caused the biggest shift for me is writing daily.
Hmm.
So I write every day. I write a blog um, that I've put out since really I started doing it in 2000, but since 2006 I got really serious about it, and I haven't missed putting it out every day since the fall of 2008.
Wow.
So for the last 13 and a half years, I have put out a daily update 5 days a week for 13 and a half years. I haven't missed one day.
Wow.
And, I will tell you that it's basically a brain dump that I do of things that I've learned, things that I'm working on. I study scripture every day, and I write a little bit about that, and I include something that I learned from somebody else. And you know, it's really I write it for myself. I do it for me, and that discipline clears my head, gets me ready for the day. Has just been a huge impact for me. I send it out to people that want it, so it goes out to about 800 people globally every morning. Um, and I'm always glad to share it. I don't put it out on the public blog. I send it out individually, but that discipline has been huge. I too wrestle with weight, so I do fasting on a weekly basis, which has been a discipline that's helped me a bit.
Mm.
For most of my life, I felt like if I wasn't eating every few hours, I might die.
Mm.
And fasting has helped me shift my mindset to realize that that's not going to happen. I'll be okay. I don't have to eat all the time. And so, through the last 2 years, I've lost about 30 pounds as a result
You
of
look great.
just changing my attitude.
Mm.
Um, so there's things like that they seem small, but they're really big. Discipline's a huge part of being able to be successful, and consistency. It's the habits we build that will determine what really happens in our life.
Mm.
And if you build those right habits with the right discipline, you can pretty much get anywhere you want to go.
Fascinating about your journaling. I always knew you did that. So is it the first thing you do? Do you put pen to paper or do you type it? Do you do it after coffee, after breakfast? Like how does that work all 5 days a week?
For my goal is to do. I type it, so my writing is
Mm.
pathetic. So I type it, and I just basically I use Mailchimp as my tool, and I create it in there, and try to get it out every morning by about 7:15, 7:30.
Wow.
And but the discipline of going through that process of reflecting really is the key, right?
Mm.
What did I learn yesterday? What was the lessons, the things that I thought about, and a lot of it is just me recording what's going on. I always learn things as I get into scripture and study a few verses there, and you know I collect throughout the week articles that I read that I think would be useful to other people. So I'll include one of those.
Hmm.
But that discipline of just starting fresh every day with what happened yesterday, gratitude for the things I've learned that I
Mm.
can share, and it just puts me in the right mindset because this is a crazy world we live in, and
Yes.
I have learned that I gotta get my head right before I can really be effective.
Good for you. Yeah, journaling. It's so important. I know so many people who do it. And um that and meditation. Do you meditate at all or is that part of your meditation?
That's part of it. It's
Yeah.
part of it. Yep.
It's fascinating to me. I do it not as often as you, and I find it really rewarding. Just also seeing your thoughts in print kind of help to solidify it for me anyway.
Exactly. When it goes through your fingers, you
Right.
get clarity, right? You can't really type unclear.
Right.
You gotta really be able to think through it to be able to put it down. So I always tell people, anybody that reads my stuff every day, there's something wrong with them. It's too much. But what I find is that people will look at one and it was just the right one they needed for where they're at, right? And they may only look at once a week or once every couple weeks, but the day they do, it's useful, and that's what keeps me sharing it. I would write it anyway, but I love to see people learn and take things and apply it in their own life.
I forgot who said it. Maybe it was Hawthorne who said, don't be a writer, just be writing. Just keep
Right.
writing, you know. What motivates you, Arlen Sorensen?
I would say the biggest thing for me is really to impact people and help people be successful. And right now, Joe, my thing is helping people move from success to significance.
Mm.
I'm focused more and more on people that are starting to exit their businesses or leave leadership roles. And the surprising thing to me has been that you would think when you sell your company successfully, you've got the money that you had hoped to earn, you've had a great career, that life would just be simple. And I find that people's identity has been so entwined in their business that when they sell it, they're lost.
Wow.
They don't have a purpose. And so, we've started a new peer group, Success to Significance, and that's the focus. How can I help you figure out your purpose for the next chapter of your life? Because the things that you didn't have when you were a startup, time and treasure, now you've got time, talent, and treasure,
Mm.
and you're set up to do really great things. But if you don't have a purpose, it won't happen. And almost always people say, I thought I could play golf, watch Netflix, travel, spend time with my family, and that worked for 2 or 3 months.
Mm.
And now I don't know what to do. So that's the stuff that motivates me is how can I help people really figure out how to be successful, but then make that transition to significance and real legacy.
That's noble and noteworthy. I know some people who are in that program, by the way, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And how do you measure success?
Well, you know, I used to measure success with money, and that is not the measure of success. I've come to believe that success is really about relationships and the influence and impact I can have through those relationships. And as I think about then shifting now to significance, it's about how do I influence not only my generation or my kids, how do I influence for generations to come?
Hmm.
And that's the thing I'm kind of focused on right now is how do I create generational legacy that's going to be here 100 years from now or 200 years from now? What can I do today that will put in place things that are going to really last over time and make an impact? And so that's really kind of my current focus right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. I share in that as well. Arlen, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you. I learned so much. I've learned so much from you and your processes and what you've done. The peer group completely changed, my business attitude and knowledge. And I have you to thank for it. And I know many do as well. You're very humble. You don't like to take the compliments, but I certainly will, and I will continue to compliment you and appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Joe. It's great to see you, and look forward to the next time we can chat.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You be well, Arlen. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.